Revenge with a capital R. I knew it was going to be one of those mornings when I opened my inbox and saw the words "time off request denied" in a bubbly, insulting font, no less. And they couldn't even bother spelling my name right. Elise, 1L, like I'm some reality TV contestant. It was the only damn reason this whole dysfunctional, rotting company hadn't already been dismantled. That request, I'd put it in 6 months ago, approved verbally twice. My first break in 15 years. 1 week off to hike in the mountains and pretend my spirit wasn't held together by artisanal coffee, budget cuts, and the vague hope for a decent severance package. But here we were. Automated rejection. No explanation. And the signature line read, "Best, Brennan Miller, Director of Client Success." I nearly choked on my cold brew. And yeah, before we go any deeper into this slow burn catastrophe, do me a small solid, tap the like button, and hit subscribe. I know, everybody asks, but 97% of folks listening don't really keep the team running when you do, like the obscure software I troubleshoot daily, unappreciated, but essential. All right, back to the nightmare. Brennan Miller, fresh from some corporate retreat in Aspen, wearing polished loafers that never touched a server room floor. He arrived with the energy of a self-help guru and the vocabulary of someone who overuses synergy like it's a virtue. His first week, he held a Brennan's brainstorm meeting and brought a ukulele, to a quarterly financial review session. Meanwhile, I was the quiet force behind the scenes. Elise Carter, Senior Systems Analyst, version 3.0. The non-billable wizard, as someone once whispered too loud in the data center. I kept quiet, kept the networks running. Well, as clean as I was allowed. You ever seen a $1 million invoice labeled Digital Transformation Retreat, Miami? I had. I processed it. I also flagged it, printed a copy, dropped it into the locked bottom drawer of my desk labeled Personal Files. Not that anyone noticed. Most days, I was invisible. A coding error in human form. I showed up early, left late, spoke only when a system crashed. I didn't have work friends. I had dying potted succulents. Hell, even the birthday card they passed around every month came to me unsigned, sealed shut with a sticky note that said, PLS AD name. Then came Friday, a grim February morning. Ice on the car, the main server crashed again, and the overhead lights above my cubicle flickered like they were trying to tap out Morse code for escape. Brennan struts in wearing a vest 2 sizes too tight, probably hoping we'd notice his lean startup physique. All hands in conference room beta in 5, he shouts like we're launching a new product, not addressing network latency issues. There he stands under a PowerPoint titled Streamlining for Agility, grinning like he just invented downscaling. 20 minutes in, there's a new organizational chart, smaller, shinier. My name is nowhere. No panic, no public meltdown. I just sit still, hands folded while my stomach drops into my shoes. Afterward, Brennan calls me into his office. The door shuts. "You're not on the new chart, Elise. Your time off is denied," he says, not even looking up from his tablet. "Also, we're eliminating your role, effective immediately." I waited for the part where he thanks me for my 15 years, for keeping the federal regulators off their backs, for covering for his predecessor, who billed the Department of Education for a home theater installation. But no, Brennan's scrolling LinkedIn like he's already replaced me with a college intern named Tiffany who does TikToks about Python scripts. I nod. Don't argue. Don't blink. Just gather my laptop bag, my lunch tote, and most importantly, the key to that bottom drawer. Inside, 1 USB drive labeled Backup Photos 2019. Cute, right? I drop it into my tote, walk out of the building, and send a single text. It's time. I didn't cry. Not when the words came out of his smirking face. Not when the door clicked behind me. Not when the HR rep handed me a manila envelope like she was passing a parking ticket. I didn't even flinch when he said it. Your time off is denied, and you're fired, effective immediately. All I did was nod like someone accepting a coffee refill they didn't ask for. Outside his office, I walked back to my cubicle with the same expression I used when someone microwaved fish in the break room. Just another Tuesday at Nexus Tech Solutions, where loyalty came with a price tag, and I was apparently on clearance. The floor was eerily silent. No one met my eye. People stared at their monitors like if they blinked, they'd be next. The same people who once relied on me to fix their VPN, fudge their software licenses, and backdate their little oopsies to keep the system squeaky. Suddenly, I was radioactive. I took my time. 15 years of my life reduced to a cardboard box and the bitter aftertaste of stale coffee. I unplugged my keyboard, stacked 3 half-dead succulents, and finally, calmly unlocked the bottom drawer. The file folders had fake names: Project Alpha, Holiday Party Receipts, Vendor Reconciliation FY17. All code, all cover, all collected quietly, year after year, like termites building a nest under floorboards. And there, wrapped in an old company sweatshirt nobody ever asked about, was the USB drive. Backup photos, 2019. The irony still made me smile. Inside that little stick, 5 years of digital fingerprints no one thought to scrub. Misused federal grants, ghost contractors, travel invoices marked confidential. There was even a time card for the CEO's nephew claiming 60 hours of work from a Hawaiian beach resort. My favorite was a scanned receipt for a high-end sushi dinner labeled Team Sync Up with a $240 bottle of sake for 2 people. I tucked it into my purse like I was pocketing gum. Brennan didn't escort me out. He didn't need to. He probably thought he just deleted a spreadsheet with legs, someone who'd vanished like she'd never mattered. And honestly, that's what I wanted him to believe. I hit the elevator button like I was going down for lunch. No scene, no goodbyes. Let the silence do the screaming. By the time the door slid shut, I felt it, like a pressure valve hissing open inside my chest. All the years I bit my tongue, buried red flags, watched bonuses get funneled to people who couldn't even log into their own email accounts. All of it was coiled inside me like a spring. And now it was unwinding. I walked out into the weak winter sun, clicked the remote on my beat-up sedan, and climbed in. My hands didn't shake. I didn't scream or punch the steering wheel. I just sat still for a moment, the kind of still where your whole life rearranges itself without permission. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to a number I hadn't used in months. It's time. No emoji, no signature, just 2 words that had lived in my drafts for 3 years, waiting for a moment I prayed would never come. Then I shifted into drive, not toward home, but east, toward the city, toward a certain parking garage beneath a certain federal building. Let Brennan have his moment. Let him feel tall. He had no idea he just fired the person who knew where the digital bodies were buried. I passed my street without even slowing down. The house, the porch, the half-dead hydrangeas out front. I didn't look, just kept my foot on the gas and let the snow-dusted city roll past the windshield like a screensaver I wasn't watching anymore. The sedan hummed like it knew this was the last trip we'd take together. One final commute, not to a cubicle or a timesheet or a surprise meeting in conference room beta, but to the building I'd been circling mentally for 5 years, the one I never thought I'd actually enter. Federal Office Complex, Building 6, downtown, gray as regret. The guard at the gate had a jaw like a vice and mirrored shades that didn't flinch when I pulled up. Identification. I handed him my license and said as calmly as if I were ordering coffee, Elise Carter. I believe I'm federal witness material. He stared for a second too long. I could see him trying to figure me out. Middle-aged woman in a sensible coat, grocery store mascara smudged from stress, a stained thermos in the cup holder. I didn't look like the kind of person who rattled cages. That was the point. He tapped something into his tablet, A green light blinked on. Park in level 2. They'll meet you inside. And that was that. No drama, no raised eyebrows, just quiet authorization. I pulled into the garage, parked neatly between 2 government-issued SUVs, and killed the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, palms on the wheel, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. Was this really happening? Then I reached into my purse and ran my fingers over the USB. It was warm from my body heat, like it had a pulse. Inside the building, a woman in a dark blazer met me without asking my name. "This way, Carter." The hallways weren't what I expected. Less law and order, more office park. Neutral paint, low ceilings, that weird government clean smell of lemon and printer ink. But the mood was different. Alert, like the air knew something was about to crack open. I was led into a small room with no windows and a table that looked like it was built for chess matches and whispered confessions. 2 agents were already seated, one bald with the posture of a Marine, the other young, eager, barely hiding his curiosity. They introduced themselves as Special Agent Miller and Agent Rodriguez. "Tell us why you're here, Ms. Carter," Miller said, lacing his fingers. I placed the USB on the table like it was a grenade. "I've been logging internal financial anomalies at Nexus Tech Solutions since 2018, I said. "I believe what I have qualifies as material evidence in a violation of multiple federal statutes, including misuse of government contracts, fraudulent audits, and money laundering." Rodriguez raised his brows, but Miller didn't move. He just nodded once. "Continue." And for the next 3 hours, I did. I told them about the bonuses disguised as vendor payments, the shell nonprofits used to reallocate federal grant money, the ghost employees, the campaign donations routed through employee appreciation funds. I listed account numbers, invoice codes. The dates falsified signatures were uploaded. They didn't interrupt, didn't laugh, didn't tell me it sounded far-fetched because it didn't. It wasn't. By the end, Miller leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You realize what you're doing, Ms. Carter. Once this moves forward, there's no stepping back." I nodded. "I've been stepping back for 15 years. I'm done." There was silence for a beat. Then he opened a file folder with my name already printed on the tab. They had been waiting. Not for someone. For me. He slid a form across the table and uncapped a pen. "Sign here. Witness ID 74A. You're going to help us bury them." And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. For the first time in years, I exhaled all the way to the bottom of my lungs, a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since the first time I saw a memo marked confidential, use redacted for audit. I didn't smile, not yet, but I felt it, the quiet relief of finally stepping out of the shadows. Brennan Miller thought he erased me before lunch. He didn't know I'd already written the eulogy. I didn't start out planning to bring down an entire company. At first, it was just a folder, a single manila folder tucked between budget printouts in my bottom drawer, labeled training materials in ballpoint pen. Inside, I slipped one suspicious invoice, $18,000 for office decor expense from a vendor I'd never heard of, filed under R&D with a billing address that traced back to a dry cleaner in Phoenix. That was 2018. I wasn't even angry back then, just tired. Tired of pretending not to see. Tired of pretending the math added up. But once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. Like staring into mold in your walls and realizing it's been breathing with you for years. I started collecting. A backup email here. A blurry cell phone picture of a whiteboard with Q3 gift flow written in dry erase marker. A copied time card for an employee who'd been on leave since 2016, but somehow logged 42 hours during Christmas week last year. Me in the break room microwaving oatmeal at 6:40 a.m. alone, forwarding an internal memo about alternate billing designations for political advocacy initiatives to my encrypted Proton mail. No one noticed. No one ever noticed. Brennan's predecessor, Mike Alcott, drunkenly ranting at the holiday party about how we buy loyalty in D.C. like vending machine gum. I smiled, handed him a cocktail napkin, and the next morning quietly exported all of Mike's Q4 expenditures. Back in the federal office, I pulled out a small leather planner I'd carried for years, disguised as a grocery list notebook. I flipped it open to a page labeled Operations Overflow Department. This department doesn't actually do anything, I explained. They exist solely to absorb questionable expenses, salaries, reimbursements, inflated consulting fees. It's where bad numbers go to hide. Agent Rodriguez looked up from his laptop, eyes narrowed. How many accounts like that are we talking? At least 9, I said. Possibly more. They rotate names every fiscal year. I handed them a printed table I'd kept hidden in the lining of my purse, a matrix of account numbers, fund names, and payment recipients. And this one, I said, pointing to the column with a half-dozen flag transfers, shows up too often to be coincidence. The name repeated across shell companies, campaign donations, and even 2 real estate deals tied to a fake nonprofit, Lyle Brewer. I let the name sit in the room like a bad smell. Who's he? Rodriguez asked. Technically a vendor. Realistically, a bagman. I think he's how they launder the money. He bills under different LLCs every few months. I tracked at least 4. Midwest Logistics, Brewer Solutions, LB Strategies, and one charmingly called Consulting Unlimited. All traced back to the same P.O. box and a Chase account opened in Cincinnati. Agent Miller jotted the name down like he already knew it. You've mapped this out before, he said. I nodded. For myself. I thought maybe one day if someone asked, but no one ever did until now. They started printing things. They brought in a 3rd agent to set up a war room. Strings, maps, just like the movies, except quieter. More coffee, more swearing. I watched my chaos become their blueprint, and I felt something I hadn't in years. Useful. Not tolerated, not ignored, not the invisible lady in HR thought I was. Useful. Every lie I filed away, every smirk I endured while executives branded fraud as creative accounting. Every sleepless night I spent second-guessing my sanity, it all led to this. I don't have every answer, I told them, but I know where the bones are buried, and I know whose shovel they used. We worked through lunch, then dinner. They didn't ask if I needed to go home. Didn't offer, because home, that place belonged to Elise Carter, Senior Systems Analyst, employee ID number 337029. She was dead. In her place stood Witness 74A, and she'd finally found her voice. It started like a soft tremor under their feet. Nothing dramatic at first, just a politely worded email from an unfamiliar government address requesting clarification regarding Q2 reporting variances. Another one, this time CCing legal. Then a request for archived invoices dating back 5 fiscal years. Then silence. Not the good kind, not the problem-solved kind, the kind that made people sweat in 2200 suits. By week 3, I heard through the grapevine, via a friend of a friend still chained to their Outlook, that Nexus Tech's general counsel had started showing up to work before sunrise. One VP took a sudden leave of absence. 2 others resigned to pursue exciting new opportunities, as the press release put it. Internal audits were announced, then quietly canceled. They upgraded everyone's machines without asking, which really meant they were yanking hard drives and imaging everything. They were circling the wagons, and I was 3 cities away scanning barcodes in a dusty warehouse for a temp agency that thought I couldn't type. It was perfect. The irony wasn't lost on me. 15 years building systems so clean, they squeaked. And now I was pretending I couldn't remember where the semicolon key was. I kept my head down, dyed my hair darker, wore oversized glasses I didn't need. I went to work. I went home. I read the same 4 lines in the same mystery novel every night before falling asleep with it on my chest. Every so often, I'd check my secure Dropbox. The feds were busy. I could tell by the file names. Brewer Wire Transfers Q3, DOJ Asset Mapping, LLC tie-ins confirmed. One file made my blood turn carbonated. Brewer Solutions beneficiary, Thomas Miller, Brennan's brother-in-law. Not some distant contact, not a friend of a friend. Blood. His wife's sister's husband stood as the majority shareholder in a shell corp that billed Nexus Tech Solutions $870,000 over 2 years for strategic alignment consulting. Consulting that consisted of PowerPoints full of recycled LinkedIn graphics and a quarterly dinner at a steakhouse with no receipts. It wasn't just fraud, it was family business. I stared at the name for a long time, my thumb hovering over my burner phone. I didn't call anyone, not yet. I knew what was coming, knew it was only a matter of time before someone started reverse engineering the leak. And if they followed the trail far enough, they'd find it led right back to a woman who hadn't even packed up her office stapler. One Tuesday afternoon, after clocking out early due to inventory system issues, translation, the place was falling apart. I came home to a message blinking on my encrypted app. Need to meet. Testimony prep. I didn't respond right away. Just stared at it like it might change if I blinked enough. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. It was more like a coiled tension in my gut, the feeling you get right before a car crash you can't avoid but somehow don't mind. I met Agent Miller at a nondescript office park 30 miles outside the city, the kind of place you'd expect to find a tax consultant or a cheap chiropractor. Inside, a rented suite with taped-down carpet and a single space heater buzzing like a bug zapper. He handed me a binder, thick, tabbed, my name on the front. "You ready for this?" he asked. I opened it. First page, Exhibit 14C. A payment authorization signed by Brennan, approved for consultant evaluation, issued to Miller Holdings. "Depends," I said. "Will I get to see his face?" Miller smirked, then nodded. "They'll know it's you soon, if they don't already." I closed the binder. Good. I wasn't looking for fame. I wasn't looking for revenge either. Not really. I just wanted the truth to hurt the people who'd used lies to climb ladders they didn't build. Brennan wanted to clean house. He just didn't know I was the one with the mop and a flood already in motion. It hit the headlines like a dropped anvil. Federal investigation launched into Nexus Tech Solutions over alleged financial misconduct. CNN picked it up. Then Reuters. Then the local stations went feral. Drone shots over the Nexus Tech campus, blurry footage of employees dodging microphones, and some poor intern caught mid-sprint with a stack of manila folders spilling like confetti. I watched it from my twin-sized mattress in a rented room above a retired librarian's garage. Microwave dinner in my lap, remote in hand, volume turned low. I didn't smile, but I did exhale, slow, steady, like releasing 15 years of corporate rot from my lungs. Within hours, Nexus Tech's stock took a nosedive. Not a crash, not yet, just a sharp, sudden skid that made the boardroom wet their tailored slacks. Trading volume tripled. Investor calls were rescheduled. Executives got real cozy with their legal teams. By the end of the week, 3 C-levels were temporarily relieved of duty pending internal review. Translation: suspended and already looking for extradition-safe vacation homes. Brennan naturally went full peacock. PR tour, LinkedIn statement, some nonsense about integrity being our North Star. He even staged a photo in front of a children's hospital while donating iPads, smiling like he hadn't signed off on fake consulting invoices 3 weeks prior. The next day, someone leaked those invoices. Every one of them redacted, sure, but not enough. Not for long. One made it to a journalist I suspected was friendly with someone inside the DOJ. The memo was titled, "Alternate Billing Guidance, Non-Standard Political Outreach." The version that hit the press had entire paragraphs blacked out. The version sitting on my encrypted drive, clean as glass, detailed exactly how Nexus Tech shuffled earmarked education grant funds through a dummy nonprofit, repackaged it as a community engagement partnership, and funneled it into campaign donations under the table. Guess who initialed the bottom? Brennan Miller in blue ink twice. And guess who had the original file, time-stamped, geotagged, and copied 6 different ways? I did. My contact at the agency sent me a Tor message the following morning. They're circling. You'll be called. This won't stay quiet. I read it on a cracked burner phone while sipping day-old coffee at a gas station cafe. No one looked at me twice. The world was burning back at Nexus Tech, and I was a ghost in a hoodie watching from the fringe. The vindication, it was sharp. Not joyful, not giddy, just surgical. Like removing a splinter you've lived with so long, you forgot the pain until it's gone. The part of me that used to make passive-aggressive spreadsheet comments or silently scream through budget meetings, she was gone now. In her place was someone colder, calmer, measured. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. Wanted them to feel the ice in their veins when they realized the walls weren't just closing in. They were already shut. Brennan tried to deny, deflect, delay. But the leaks didn't stop. Each one was a breadcrumb trail laced with arsenic. Signed receipts, internal memos, voicemails accidentally forwarded to the wrong inboxes. The press had a feast, and somewhere between the 3rd op-ed and the 7th anonymous quote from a former accounting executive, the story stopped being a headline. It became a reckoning. They didn't know my name yet, but they would. The envelope came on a Tuesday. Thick, cream-colored, official. No fanfare, no warning, just a subpoena to testify. United States District Court, staring up at me from the mailbox like a long-forgotten debt come due. I opened it with steady hands. I knew it was coming. The feds had warned me. Still, seeing it in black ink made something settle in my bones like concrete hardening around old scars. Court date, time, location, my full name in bold. Witness for the prosecution. I hung the blazer I'd borrowed from my temp agency's receptionist on the back of my chair that night. It was a size too big and smelled faintly of baby powder and peppermint gum, but it would do. I'd worn worse to board meetings with people who had 10 times less integrity and 20 times the salary. That morning, I walked through the courthouse doors with the stillness of someone who'd already lived through worse. Worse than perjury threats. Worse than subpoena drills. Worse than watching executives swap accountability like it was hot potato. Courtroom 9B was cold, fluorescent, and quiet in a way that made your breath feel intrusive. He was already there. Brennan, wearing a $4,000 suit that couldn't hide the fact he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Puffy eyes, blotchy skin, nervous fingers that couldn't stop adjusting his tie like it might hang him if he didn't get it just right. He turned and saw me. And for the first time in the 2 years since he fired me, he actually saw me. Not the woman whose name he misspelled on a termination form. Not the background character from his little efficiency purge. He saw the storm that had been quietly cataloging his rot year after year in spreadsheets he never bothered to audit. The prosecution began. My name was called. I walked to the stand with my binder tucked tight to my chest and the click of borrowed heels echoing like a countdown. State your name for the record. Elise Carter. Occupation. Former Senior Systems Analyst. Nexus Tech Solutions Incorporated. Why are you here today, Ms. Carter? I opened the binder. Because I was the only person in that building who bothered to read the footnotes. What followed wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no tearful breakdowns, just numbers, dates, documents, pages marked draft that had somehow become final. Vendor payments with routing numbers that tied directly back to Brennan's brother-in-law's Shell Corporation. And then finally, motive. I detailed the clerical error from 2020 that wiped out my entire 401k match for the year. How HR claimed it was a systems glitch. How 3 others had the same issue, all of us nearing our pension thresholds. None of us ever got it back. I showed the emails, me asking about the discrepancy, their evasive replies. I presented Exhibit 38B, a bonus payout list from that same quarter. 7 names, all executive. 1 payout equivalent to exactly the amount recovered from employee accounts, mine included. Brennan paled. You could see the jury clock it, the blood leaving his face as fast as his credibility. He tried to avoid eye contact, but I looked right at him, not out of vengeance, out of recognition. He'd underestimated the quiet one, the woman who brought in homemade cookies and stayed late and never said no, the one who smiled politely while she scanned his receipts for fraud. Now I sat under oath telling the truth he'd buried under buzzwords and bluster. By the end of my testimony, the courtroom was still. No coughs, no whispers. Just the scrape of my chair as I stood, closed the binder, stepped down. Not victorious, just clean. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about gravity. And gravity always wins. The arrests came quietly, the way thunder does when it's already over your head. One by one, the news dropped names like rotten fruit. CFO indicted on conspiracy and wire fraud. General counsel under investigation for obstruction. 2 VPs facing campaign finance violations. And Brennan, arrested at his yoga studio in full Lululemon, mid-Warrior II, according to the reporter with a sense of humor. They led him out past the treadmills while Journey's Don't Stop Believin' played in the background. That part made me laugh once. Just once. Nexus Tech Solutions bled out over the next week. Federal contracts frozen. Investigations opened in 4 departments. The stock stopped dipping and simply fell through the floor like wet ceiling tile. By Friday, the board released a statement full of legally massaged regret, unforeseen oversight, committed to accountability. The usual white-collar word salad served with a side of plausible deniability. They were in full evacuation mode, scrambling to restructure, reassure shareholders, rebrand their name into something that didn't taste like ash in your mouth. And me? I was gone. Not dead, not vanished, just removed. I turned in my burner phones, wiped my drives, bought a second-hand Jeep from a retiree who cried when he handed over the keys. Left the city with 1 suitcase, 2 potted plants, and a binder labeled Old Taxes that no longer held any paper. Somewhere along the drive north, my lawyer called. Nexus Tech's offering a settlement, she said. You're not named in the suit. You don't have to take it, but they know what you did, and they're scared of it happening again. I paused. I didn't do it for the money. I know, she said. This isn't about the money. It's hush insurance. They want closure. How much? She told me. I nodded. Put it in the fund, the one for women who whistleblow and lose their pensions. She was quiet a moment, then said, That's poetic. No, I said. That's math. A week later, the Department of Justice issued their public statement. A footnote at the bottom read, This investigation would not have been possible without the extensive cooperation of witness number 74A. No name, no photo, no grandstanding, just an echo of the woman I used to be. I rented a small cabin in Vermont where the mail is still hand-delivered and the roads don't care if you drive slow. The only new thing I owned was a tiny tin mailbox. On it, a sticker with a new name. I'd chosen one no one could misspell. The days were quiet. I chopped wood, learned to make sourdough, read paperbacks I never finished. No TV, just radio and the occasional rustle of foxes in the leaves. I still had the blazer. Hung it by the door like a photograph you don't hang on the wall. Sometimes, when the snow got too loud, I'd sit by the fire with a mug of strong tea and flip through the thick, bound copy of the court transcripts. Not to gloat, not even to remember, just to remind myself it happened. I didn't imagine it. I didn't exaggerate. Didn't dream the whole thing up in a fit of midlife panic. The company really did collapse. The system really did crack. And I really was the one who pulled the thread. The knock came just after sunrise, soft, polite. Not the knock of someone with bad news or demands. Just a single, courteous rap against the wood of the cabin's old door. Like the sound a bird makes when it forgets the glass is real. I opened it barefoot, still in my robe, mug in hand. A courier, young kid in a bright jacket, steam pouring off his breath in the cold. Delivery 4. He checked the envelope. Miss Nolan. That was me now, Miss Nolan. The name I gave to the mailbox, to the DMV, to the silence. I signed, nodded, and shut the door before he could ask what I did out here in the middle of the woods with no Wi-Fi and a wall full of books. The envelope was thick, stiff, no return address. Inside, a single newspaper clipping, cut with perfect edges. Wall Street Journal National Edition. Front page, business section. Final convictions in Nexus Tech Solutions. Fraud case. Former CEO Brennan Miller, sentenced to 19 years. DOJ. Thanks anonymous whistleblower witness number 74A for unprecedented cooperation. His mugshot took up half the fold. His eyes, once so smug and glossy, now dull and sunken like someone who finally realized the mirror was real. A face that had run out of rooms to spin in. I stood there for a long moment, letting the ink sink in. The fire crackled behind me. Somewhere outside, a squirrel chattered like it had a stake in the whole thing. No applause, no breaking news banner. Just closure printed in newsprint. I walked out onto the porch, pulled the quilt tighter around my shoulders, and sank into the wooden rocker. Set my tea down, opened the thick gray binder that sat beside the chair. The label on the front was neat, typed, and underlined. Nexus Tech cleanup completed. Inside were the printouts, the testimony, the charts, the letters from the DOJ, a few clippings, no photos, just facts. I flipped to the last page and let the wind turn it. Brennan thought firing me would buy him control. He thought stripping me of my time off, my title, my pension, hell, even my name, would leave me limping into obscurity with nothing but resentment and a half-used 401k. But what he actually did, he gave me a purpose. He put the final nail in a coffin I'd been quietly building for 5 years. I took a sip of tea, breathed in the crisp morning air, and smiled without showing teeth. He thought denying my vacation would cost me a week in Aruba. Instead, it cost him everything. Lesson learned. This story reminds us that integrity and truth are powerful forces, even when faced with overwhelming corruption. While the path to justice can be long and isolating, holding on to one's principles can ultimately lead to a profound sense of purpose and liberation. It highlights that even the quietest individuals can have the greatest impact when they choose to stand up for what is right.